Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cammie Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
From childhood, our money stories shape the way we see the world, sometimes with clarity and sometimes with confusion. For playwright David Adjmi, growing up in a family in a neighborhood where money was about hustle, performance, and status left him questioning what financial security and self-worth really meant. In this episode, David opens up about the lessons he's carried from those early experiences and how they've influenced both his art and his financial life.
Here are 3 key money topics David hits on in this conversation. First, money and identity can become intertwined, but separating the two leads to freedom. Second, creative purpose often collides with financial realities, and that tension shapes choices. And third, reframing money as a tool for security and growth transforms it from a source of fear into empowerment. Now it's our pleasure to bring you David Adjmi's Money Tales. Welcome to the podcast, David Adjmi. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
As we were getting ready for this interview, I went back in my memory to a time when I lived in New York City. I was working for a large accounting firm at the time, and I had some extra time on my hands, so I wanted to volunteer. And I lived in Hell's Kitchen, right in the theater district around Times Square. And I learned about an organization that matches people in the finance area with people in the theater world. And I began volunteering with a very small theater group, and I was helping them with their financial needs. And it was really interesting for me. It was the first time I intersected with art and money. I hadn't really been part of that world before, and I learned some really interesting things. First, spreadsheets aren't for everyone. The theater director was...
Even those of us who work in finance, it's not.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone.
I put together the most beautiful spreadsheets. I still remember having my head down, and I would show it to the theater director, and I could have been speaking Greek to her. She's a very smart woman, but she had no idea what I was talking about. It really allowed me to understand the importance of language in money conversations and making sure that we were talking about the same things. And it forced me to get creative, learning to talk about money using metaphors and different things like that. But it was a really fun experience.
I love that, Sandy. And I think it's a reminder that we all learn and experience things differently. And the power of story to bring to life sticky concepts and make it resonate with you personally. I know I've worked with you for a long while now. You do that. And there are some people who just really get it when you hand them a spreadsheet, and that is their love language. And then others want to connect with themselves personally, and what does it mean to them? And what a great, important story.
It was. And these were important money conversations because, as I'm sure we'll hear more about, money and theater, they have their own relationship. And it was really an exercise of trying to make a small amount of resources stretch as much as they could in order to support the art that this group was putting together.
It's a perfect way to segue over to David's story. David, would you briefly introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that have taken place in your life that really influenced who you are today?
Well, my name's David Adjmi. I am a playwright, which is a very odd trade, but that's what I got. I grew up in New York, and I came of age really in the golden age of Broadway musicals, which I didn't know at the time. But that's what it was. So I was seeing, shows by Michael Bennett, shows by Bob Fosse, things like A Chorus Line and Chicago when I was really, really little. My mom used to take me to see these plays. We got very inexpensive, speaking of money, very inexpensive tickets at something called the TKTS booth, which still exists. And you can get half price or less tickets to Broadway musicals and Broadway plays. And at the time, it was a really good deal. I mean, we could see shows for under $10. So that's where I sort of developed my habit, if you will, of going to the theater. And my life built around that in a way that I can't really explain. I thought I was going to do something like write novels or maybe go to Hollywood and make movies. I sort of dabbled with all of those things, but something about the world of the theater and the way that it intersects a whole bunch of art forms actually, because it feels like it lives at the intersection of dance and literature and dramatic storytelling and all these things. It just really appeals to me, and I guess there's something about the arcaneness of it that I do love. I was just talking to a friend of mine who works at the Public Theater, and she said, no matter what happens with technology, we'll always be here. You can always gather people in a space. And there's just something I think about the elemental quality of it and the human quality of it that really appeals to me. So that sort of led me to the life that I have.
Playwriting life, where
Yeah.
you pull all these interests together. And take us back to this time as you're growing up. For me, I love TKTS, and I lived in New York for a short period. My roommate and I would grab H&M bagels, the newspaper back in the day when you'd actually get paper, and we'd go down and just hang out and wait to see what tickets we're going to buy. And I love it. What a gift to all of us. How did you start learning about money and understanding it and feeling money?
Well, I grew up in a very, very wealthy community of Syrian Sephardic Jews in Brooklyn, New York. My mother's first cousin was Eddie Antar, who ran a business called Crazy Eddie and was then got into a lot of trouble with that business. My dad was a businessman. My uncle was in business. There was a lot of schmatas going on in the family. I mean, there was a lot. My dad had like a schmata business, but it was also kind of fungible because there was schmatas, there were tablecloths, but then it was electronics, but then he did a little of this and a little of that. So he was kind of like a jack of all trades. And everyone was hustling, I think, when I grew up. They had those electronic stores in Midtown, near that area, like up Fifth Avenue, where they sold electronics, figurines. There were these signs, going out of business, painted with like fluorescent red and black. My dad painted those signs sometimes for a living. I would see him actually at the living room tables with his stencil making the signs. So he did that sometimes as well. My brothers worked in those electronic stores. And what I understood about all this from a young age was that money was a hustle, that there was something untoward about making money, that there was a lot of conspicuous consumption, to quote Thorsten Veblen, in my community that I grew up in. People like to show their money. It was a nouveau riche attitude of, I want to show you my Ferrari. I want to show you my home. I want to show you my value. I want to show you the comfort with which I live. And it was very seductive. And those appearances were very seductive. And we didn't come from a lot of money. My dad had some and then he didn't have it. And so I felt the deprivation of it. And I felt the desire for it, but I also felt a hostility toward it. Like I felt a lot of confusing emotions around it because I wasn't given a metric for how to understand what it could mean for me in a healthy way to have it. And what was the value of it? There was almost like this idea that you didn't use money to get things that you needed. It really was about performance and it was about display. If you had it, you didn't live beneath your means, you lived above your means to sort of exaggerate your own sense of self in the world that you were living in and to give yourself a feeling, a sense of status. And that status and self-worth were kind of conflated. So it was confusing for me. And my parents never discussed it with me. I never had an allowance growing up. When I was about 12 years old, I went to this Jewish yeshiva and they used to have these charity boxes. And, I started to have a best friend when I was 12 years old and he always wanted to do things and I never had any money and he would pay for me to take the bus or to get pizza or to go to a movie. And I thought, I don't like this, but I don't know how to get any money. And so one day I took one of those charity boxes and thought, well, I need this charity too. I'm going to take it. And so I took it home with me and I got like a can opener and my mother was like, what are you doing? And I thought, nothing. And she saw me with this charity box and said, oh my God, what have you done? This is terrible. Why did you do this? And I said, because I haven't got any money and no one will give it to me and I don't know how to get it and I'm too young to get a job. And so then my parents, by default, started giving me an allowance. So that's an indication of how bizarre my relationship with money was from such a young age.
David, I love the description and you bringing this to life. And I can just imagine you trying to break open the Tzedakah box and get all the money out of it. How did this mixed experience with money carry with you as you grew up and decided that you wanted to pour your heart and soul into writing and playwriting specifically?
I was really discouraged from being a writer by my dad, by my mom. I mean, they really threatened me appropriately with all the warnings and adjurations of you're going to not have any money when you grow up, you're going to be broke your whole life. I was dooming myself to something, but I did feel it was a calling for me. And I think it was like because this world of money, this bubble that I lived in, was so concomitant with a kind of aggressive superficiality that was so at odds with who I was as a human being. I felt I had to combat it with everything I had. It made my purpose that much clearer to me. So I thought, well, if I haven't got any money, that's fine. I didn't know what that meant when I was starting out. Of course, it was not fine.
Was that sort of a badge of honor for you?
It wasn't a badge of honor necessarily, but there was something about the money that like made me nervous. Even the way that my dad used money in order to entice me or to reward me or to punish me or to punish my mother because they were separated. So he would give it to her when he wanted to get something or he would withhold it. It felt so, there was an ugliness that I associated with it. And I thought, I don't want to confuse my own worth with money. So I'm going to sort of silo these two things and I'm going to do something because I care about it only. And that's all I could think about.
That's such a mature approach.
It was not even a mature, it was like this deep spiritual impulse of I can't muddy my spiritual truth right now with anything else. I just need to focus on what I have to do and then I'll figure it out from there. Of course, it got very complicated and they weren't wrong because playwriting does not pay you very much. It was a crucible and I had to go through that and figure that out over time. It was a calling for me. I had to sort of understand myself, and the playwriting was going to be a way for me to really kind of disambiguate and parse and learn about these things that I was still so confused about in myself. So I sort of had to put the money issues to the side.
David, you used a word, a calling, and that's so provocative. And I've never had necessarily a calling. I feel like I found my purpose in things I did. Describe what that's like that enables you to put money over on the side to have this calling to pursue.
It's a great question. It's hard to describe it because I don't know. I felt displaced at a very young age. I felt that I was craving reality and I was craving certain deep conversations about what I was feeling that had no outlet in the world. And I think that if you're, for example, in a relationship and your relationship is not becoming a vessel for you to deepen your understanding of yourself and of life and enrich your experience of life, you want to break up, right? And so, I mean, most people want that. And so I feel like that was my relationship to my whole world. The way in which the forces around me created something so inhibiting that I needed to find expression. And I think it was very fortuitous that I was in New York and had access to the theater because the theater was both my escape and it was also became like a way in. And there were musicals at the time that were not just pure escapism. They were electrifying, they were thrilling and bigger than life, but they were also dealing with the pain of exclusion, like Dreamgirls, or like Sweeney Todd, or like the cynicism of life, like in Chicago. Like they were sort of, it was a very, very interesting time to be watching musical plays. So there was something that got planted in me, a seed that got planted. And I just felt myself come alive when I was in the theater, and I wanted to feel alive. And I don't think I felt it so often in my childhood. It was kind of a grim childhood. You know what I mean? I was in a very conservative Jewish yeshiva, and I didn't really understand that my politics were not really aligned with them because I didn't have a politics explicitly at the time. I didn't know who I was. I just had these kind of ideas foisted on me. And then my adolescence was a time of putting words to the feelings that I had, and then starting to develop a game plan for my life based on what I was learning about myself, and pulling myself out of this kind of weird displacement and finding my place. And so that was really all I wanted. I just thought if I can just feel alive and feel comfortable in my own skin and feel like I belong to something that feels good to me, that's really all I need at the moment. I couldn't think about anything else. Like that would be my survival, more so than the money. I feel like the money was very confusing to me, and I think it scared me because of the way I saw it being deployed.
Yeah, people were showing their money more than anything, it sounds like.
Yeah, it became a kind of ploy, or there was something sort of hierarchical about it that I didn't like. And I mean, part of me was seduced by it, and I liked nice things too. I was really entranced by all that, and I wanted to go out to all these nice restaurants and live the high life and go on vacations and everything too. So I'm not immune from all that. I have an inner voluptuary, but there was some charge that I felt spiritually where I was like, that's not it. That's not where I start. That's not where I have to start. I have to do this other thing, and then I'll figure the rest out. But this has to be the basis for my life.
That's really helpful because it's, you were pursuing your vision, what you needed to do, and you would solve for it. The money would come as you needed it. And I think that's a great perspective. You could go get the money, but if that's the primary purpose, then you continue to lose yourself. And that's a tough crossroads to be in.
And it's the crossroads of every artist. And I think everyone has to make the decision, like, how much of myself am I willing to give up in order to give people something that they think they want in the form of this piece of entertainment. It's the age-old predicament of the artist. And that's why this whole idea of selling out, which is something I really heard a lot. Oh, don't sell out. I mean, that was very much something that I grew up with in the 90s, especially when I was coming up. You don't sell out. People don't talk about that anymore because it's not that kind of world. The world has changed quite drastically.
David, say more about that, because I'm curious as to how you might have sold out and whether you think you did, because Cammie and I lived through the 90s too. I definitely understand what you're talking about, generally speaking, but in your world as an artist who is creating works of art in order to express yourself, in order to live the life as who you are as a person, but also you need food, you need clothing, you need a place to live. How are you balancing that out? And how did selling out play into that?
Well, I want to step back for a moment and talk about what I think art is, because I think people don't really understand it in this country, even a little bit. I don't think there's a language around art. And I don't think people understand the role of the artist or how to even make sense of artists on their tax forms. What is this? What are you doing? What do you mean you don't have a job? What is this kind of payment that you're getting? I've dealt with this my whole life. It's almost like we're subalterns. We don't have a proper place. There's no stature accorded to the artist in society. For me, art is non-transactional in its very essence, meaning I am not here to extort something from you and get a payment. I am giving you something from a very deep place in me that may be distressing, discomforting. It might tell you something that you don't want to hear, but you need to hear. It might show you something that feels unfamiliar, but you might need to find a new way to assimilate it. I'm giving something of myself as an act of generosity in order to fortify this culture in a way that it might not even understand it needs to be fortified. So that's what I believe art in its essence really is. It's not giving you something that you already understand or believe you understand. It's turning upside down what you think you understand so that you can understand it better, right? Or as Hegel would say, it's turning it right side up. So that's what I think it is. But I think in America, we're so suspicious of anything that is not a transaction. The artist is vilified in this society because we're not playing the capitalist game in the same way. And we're giving what Lewis Hyde calls a gift. Other people call it a gift too, but I'm thinking of Lewis Hyde's book about the gift economy. There's something so pure-hearted about it. I think a lot of people in America don't really know what to make of that. And the idea of funding around art sounds like a scam. You know, when I won the Tony Award, I made a plea and said, please, we have to fund the arts. I mean, I saw what happened in my lifetime to the National Endowment of the Arts. And then I looked online at one point and saw all these people lambasting me for saying that and saying that I just want a free artists
Why?
want a free ride and you should do what everyone else
Oh,
wants. And I just thought, oh, there's such an impoverished language around what art is. And actually, it made me so sad. And it spoke to a soul sickness at the core of this country that is related to how art is meant to work in this ecology, which it doesn't. There is no ecology that includes art, and there is not really an understanding of it. There's less and less teaching around it in the schools. The liberal arts right now are kind of denigrated because what's the point? I mean, higher education is becoming like trade schools. Like you pay your money and now you can be a plumber. Okay, go make your money. Okay, that's it. There's something so
Transactional, as you've been saying.
transactional. Everything is instrumentalized. And because people don't always know how to instrumentalize a work of art, because it applies to different kinds of faculties in human beings, they reject it and they dismiss it categorically. I think it's a crisis because it relates to the way people perceive their own humanity and the humanity of others. And we are in a crisis of humanity in this nation and around the world.
you talked about this funding for the arts, and where my brain goes is we put it in the jar that says philanthropy. But what you presented was creating value. I'm going to use value, coming at this from a traditional sense of, economics. But it is the value that I am going to receive. And it shouldn't just be a philanthropic bucket. It's an investment. It's really important for the culture. What you've brought to life for me. And that's a powerful perspective to think differently about the arts. And you've thought differently to create what you've created. And I wonder if you could share to have the success you've had, is that hard? You're getting the attention. Maybe you didn't want the attention, but you're achieving your art. Is that hard for you? How do you feel when you've received such success?
I mean, it's fine. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. It's nice. It's like I've been doing this a really long time. I think if this happened to me 20 years ago, it would be more dislocating because it's actually felt kind of an extreme kind of success that is unusual for a playwright. I've noticed a lot on the street, or I've noticed on the subway, or if I go to a party now with a lot of fancy writers. I was at one just the other night and everyone knew who I was and they all said hello, and which was nice. I didn't dislike that. I don't know. I'm not a terribly egotistical person, really. So I see myself as like I just have to keep proving myself. I'm not doing enough. I mean, this is all part of my my problem, but it's actually good. It's actually good to have that problem. I would say I'm humble, but there is a kind of humility deep down in me of in terms of just my work and like you're not done. No, this isn't enough. No, keep going. This is the beginning. Okay, good. Good beginning. You have a lot to do. So that's how I think when I'm working. It's not enough. And so everyone can laud me and say, oh, how great. And they saw me in the paper. And that's great. But, but I know the truth, which is I have a lot of work to do. See what I mean? As long as I can keep those two things separate, I'm okay.
Wow, that's great.
David, all of this makes me wonder how you would describe your relationship with money today. Because you have had career success. The art that you're making is getting attention. It is working through the culture and causing the culture to re-examine itself. And it's creating a different financial outcome for you.
Yeah. It's been very fascinating and interesting. I have a business manager now. I just saw him yesterday and I said I was going on this podcast. I said, "Oh, you'll be so proud of me. I'm going to talk all about money." But I'm very proud that I can talk about money now. I think it's such a dirty secret. I mean, I had been in debt. I had owed back taxes. I couldn't pay my bills. I was sort of playing a shell game with myself with money for so long because I had so little of it. And I thought, well, I have to do this if I'm going to do my work. And I got to find a way of making time for this work because it has to be the most important thing. And I'm really fortunate because that paid off. Literally, it paid off. And I was able to make a very decent amount of money, more than I ever had in my life from the Broadway show. And for the first time, I started learning about investments. I started learning about what an IRA is. I have my own S Corp now. I educated myself and I thought, okay, I want to understand what is the stock market? What is inflation? What is a recession? How do these things work? What is the ecology of all this and how do they all go together? What's an ETF? When should I buy the dip? I mean, all these things that you guys probably think about this all the time. And, it's like, the 101, learning about NAV erosion, learning about the VIX, I mean, I really want to know these things.
You really dove right in, didn't you?
I love
It's
it.
amazing.
I know I never knew a thing about any of this. And I thought I want to know because I think it's healthy to know. And I want to start saving my money and I want to start thinking about what inflation means and how to care for myself and how to build a sort of holistic relationship to money so that it's doing what I want it to do so I can care for myself as a whole person and be the artist that I want to be and continue to do the work that I've always done and monetize it as best as I can without changing anything. So that's sort of how I've been thinking of it. I don't want to change who I am. And I don't want to change my mission in the world or the kind of work I make in order to make money. I don't think you have to do that. And I've proven that to myself and I want to keep proving it.
David, the most powerful thing that you said in all of those powerful words was that you wanted to control your relationship with money. You didn't want to be controlled by money.
Yeah.
And that is such a worthy pursuit. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
As you were writing I think it's your most recent play, very successful, Stereophonics. That's a 10-year journey. Was that right?
Yeah.
That's a long time to build something in my mind, but maybe not from an artist standpoint. And the underlying story is really powerful. Maybe you can give a high level on it. To me, money runs throughout that story. And I'm curious how you think about it.
It's a very bizarre mirror effect between the play and my life because it is about a band recording their second album together. And as they're recording their second album, their first album starts bizarrely a year later, climbing back up the charts. And suddenly they're becoming enormously famous after the fact. And now the pressure is on with this second album. Their budget is tripled. They have endless amounts of money. And the money becomes slightly an abyss for them. Because as we know, all of this freedom can actually become incredibly confusing when there are limits. Sometimes those limits and bounds can be make you feel more secure. I think for them, the process goes on and on and on, the same way that my process from writing the play went on and on and on. And because they are trying desperately to perfect this thing, because they feel so much pressure to live up to what people are expecting from them. And so in that process, things go a little bit awry. Their relationships start to splinter, but the album is great. I mean, I think it's great, so they end up doing what they want to do, but it costs them.
David, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Tell us, what is your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
It will probably be with my best friend Paul, and I'll talk to him about my investments because I'm obsessive about it, and I'm very fascinated with the state of the stock market right now. So I like to keep tabs, and I drive him crazy.
I like how curious you are, and this is just another example of it. David, where's the best place for our listeners to find you?
Well, I have a website, strangely enough, davidadjmi.com. I'm also on Instagram, but I don't know what my label is there. What is it called? My pen name?
Handle?
My
Your
handle.
handle,
My
right?
handle. I'm so technologically savvy. And I'm also on Blue Sky, and I don't know what my handle is there either. But just look me up. You'll find me. Just Google. Just
Absolutely.
Google.
This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your story and your perspectives on money and life, and then using your beautiful language to really connect with us. And we talked about the power of stories earlier. It's so sticky. So thank you so much, David. Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening, and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Asperient. Go to asperient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@asperient.com. See you next time.